Hello class, today I'm going to help you review what lines are again. So by definition, a line is a straight line that is showing the relationship between two things. For example, y and x, how are they related? Or time and the distance, how are those two related? Lines can be represented by equations. There are two ways in which we typically see lines written. One of the format is called standard form, where we'll have a number, I'm going to write a for now, times x, plus another number times y, plus another singular number is equal to 0. So basically, for example, you might see a line equation that says negative 5x plus 2y minus 7 is equal to 0. This is what we call standard form of a line, and you'll understand why when we learn quadratics this year. The other way which you often see lines is called the slope y-intercept form, and that's the one that you remember as y equals mx plus b. And the reason why it's called slope y-intercept form is because in this format you can find out two information about lines that are very important. One is the m, which represents the slope of the line, which we call the steepness of the line, okay? And we write the slope as rise over run. The symbol we have for slope was m, so we write the rise divided by the run. Another way we can calculate the slope is the change in y over the change in x, and so forth. The other information that we get from the slope y-intercept form is the y-intercept, which is in the b. This plus b can be all sorts of things. It could be negative, it could be positive, but basically it just tells you where along the y-axis does it cross. Okay, so we call that the y-intercept. All right, so let's use a few examples for you to see. These ones don't have y-intercept. Do you notice how all of these here just don't have anything after it? Therefore, that means they all cross at the origin, the 0, 0. Okay, so our b value is 0. I'm going to draw the y equals x. And that one typically goes right through the origin, nice and straight horizontally like that. Not horizontally, but diagonally, sorry. The other one is y equals 3x, and that means that it has a slope of 3. If it has a slope of 3, if I start at the origin, that means I go 3 up, 1 over. Remember, 3 is over 1. We always like slope as a fraction because we can see the rise and the run. So that means 3 up, 1 over, and there's my next point. 3 up, 1 over, there's my other point. The other way I go 1 over, 3 down. And so I can draw that line here. Okay, and that becomes a steeper line. Do you notice that? The green one is steeper because it has a slope of 3. The blue line had a slope of, what's the invisible number in front of x? 1. So it makes sense that 3 is steeper because it's a bigger number than 1. The next one, the purple one here, is y equals 1/3 x. Well, 1/3 is smaller than 1. So its rise, though, is 1, and its run is 3. So I only go up 1, but now I run 3. So there's my next point. Up 1 over 3. And so by drawing that line, I will get a less steep line, which makes sense when I now draw it out. The next one, the orange one, is y equals negative x. And remember, there's an invisible number of 1. So it's really a negative 1 for the slope, which is negative 1 over 1. So now if I go from the origin, down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1. Okay? And so it's just the opposite of the blue one where I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm going downwards, hence the negative. And so now when I do the y equals negative 3x, I'm going the same direction, but now a steeper slope, right? So I'm going to that idea of a steeper slope, but in the negative direction because I'm going downwards. All right, so we talked about slope, but again, slope is represented by m, and it's the, slope by definition is the steepness of a line, so how high or how shallow it is. And it's represented by m, which is rise over run. The other one is change in y over the change in x. We can also expand it by y2 minus y1 x2 minus x1. And remember, the reason why that formula is used is because you can take a pair of points, and I just need to make sure that these line up, and I have a point of x1, y1, and then I have another point that's x2, y2. Okay, and I use these 2 points to figure out the slope using this formula. How do I graph now? Well, so if I'm graphing, then that means that it's easy when it's in the slope y-intercept form, because I can look at this equation here and say 4 is my slope, and -3 is where I'm crossing the y-axis. Okay, so that means I'm crossing at -3, and my slope was a fraction, 4/1. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4 up, 1 across. So then I can draw that. Once I have 2 dots, I can always draw a line. Okay, easy. The next one is this format. It's not quite in the slope y-intercept form quite yet. We normally like our x in front, so really it should be -3/4x. And then this is a +2, so I should write +2. Now in this format, I think you can better visualize that the -3/4 is my slope, and my +2 is my y-intercept. So +2 is where I always want to start when I'm graphing, and then my slope is down 3 because it's -3, but then over 4. Okay, so there I am. And so now I have 2 points. I can draw my line, and hopefully you should be using a ruler. I'm just doing this quickly for you to see. And that makes sense. It's a negative slope, so it would be going downwards from left to right. The last one, this one's harder to see and visualize to graph because it's in standard form. So we can always rearrange and rewrite it in slope y-intercept form for us to quickly get the slope and the y-intercept. So to do that, I need y by itself, right? Like that's the key in slope y-intercept. So I'm going to move the 4x to the other side. Remember, when you move things to the other side, it changes the sign. So -4x. I still have that +10. But the y should be by itself. So I'm going to have to divide everything by -2. That means each component on the right side. That's all gone. So now if y is by itself on the left side, -4 divided by -2 is a +2x, and +10 divided by -2 is a -5. So now I can see that the slope of this line is 2, and the y-intercept is -5. Okay, so -5 is down here. That's where I'm going to start with my dot. Slope is a fraction, 2/1. So up 2/1. There's the other dot. And I can keep doing that, or I can find a ruler and then just draw my line. There we have it. So those are 3 different equation looks and I showed you how to graph them using this format. Okay. One last thing I just want to review is if I have a graph, how do I write the equation? Well, the format that we love to write this line equation is y equals mx plus b. And remember, m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. So if I can find those 2 things in my graph, I can write the equation. So let's do the blue one first. The blue one, well, the y-intercept is here at -5. So I already know that I can put -5 on this side of the equation of y equals mx plus b. But now I need to just fill in my slope. I can look at the graph, and I need to find 2 points that are on the crosshairs of the grid to count my slope. So from this point to this point, let's say, I'm going to count. How do I get there? I go 1, 2, 3, 4 up, which is my rise. Then I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is my run. Okay, so that means it's rise over run, so it's 4/6. Well, it's a fraction, but we always like simplified fractions. So I'm just going to reduce this by 2. So I get 2/3. X minus 5 is the blue line's equation. There we have it. Let's do the green one just so we make sure we understand. And the fact that it is a downward line, right? So if I want to find my y-intercept first, I'm going to look on the grid. Oh, look, it's here. This is at 3. That's my y-intercept. So I know on the equation I'm going to put a plus 3. Remember, the sign is very important. That's a plus 3, or positive 3. Now to find my slope, which is in front of my x, I need 2 points. I've got a point here, and I'm going to use this point over here. So to get from this point to the top point, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And because I'm going to the left side, I'm going to say that's -5 is my run. But then to go up to the point, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 is my rise. So I'm going to do positive 4 over -5. Remember, it doesn't matter if the negative's on the bottom or the top. It means the same thing. And I can't reduce it, but we just like that negative in front here. -4 over 5 x plus 3. And that makes sense for this line equation because it is a downward slope. All right, sorry for the long video, but hopefully now you have recalled all your information about lines from last year. Have fun!